The rope creaked. Justice in Paradise Springs, Montana had a sound. It was the sound of old oak and twisted hemp, a sound that cut right through the morning air and silenced a whole town. 1889 was a hard time in a hard place. Justice wasn't about what was right. It was about who had the most gold in their pockets or the most guns on their hips. Sheriff Bill Hollister stood at the edge of the crowd. His face was weathered leather, carved by 68 years of sun and snow. He'd spent decades trying to keep the peace in this valley, and every single fight had left a line on his face. The silver badge on his chest felt heavy today, heavier than the colt on his hip. It used to mean something. Now he wasn't so sure. On the gallows, a boy named Jeff Daniels was trembling. He was only 22. His crime? Horse theft. His eyes were wide, darting through the crowd, looking for a friendly face, looking for mercy. But there was none to be found. Not today. Any final words? The voice belonged to Wesley Bishop. He was 58, dressed in a tailored suit that didn't belong in this dusty town. A silver watch chain gleamed on his vest. Bishop owned the bank. He owned the general store. He owned half the valley, and he had his eyes on the other half. He was the man who held the gold. Please, Jeff's voice cracked. It was thin and reedy. My wife, she's in labor. I just took the horse to get the doctor. I was going to bring it right back. Bishop just nodded to the man at the lever. Theft is theft, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The law is clear. Bill Hollister's hand went to his gun. This wasn't the law. This was a message. But he looked at the faces in the crowd. Men he'd known his whole life, all of them staring at their boots. No one would stand up to Wesley Bishop. Not anymore. The lever was pulled. The trap door slammed open with a crack that made your teeth hurt. Bill turned his back. He couldn't watch. He'd seen enough death. As he walked away, he felt eyes on him. He turned. It was Wesley Bishop, and Bishop was smiling. Just a little twitch at the corner of his mouth, but the message was as clear as the big sky overhead. Even the law answers to Wesley Bishop. 2 hours away, Jack Hollister shoved a shovel into the hard-packed earth. At 62, he still had the shoulders of the Union cavalry captain he'd once been. His hair was streaked with silver, and his eyes had seen too much war to ever really be at peace. He was digging a grave, not for a man, for a dog. Old Blue. The hound had been his only company at the Broken Spur Ranch for 8 long years, more loyal than any person Jack had ever known. He gently placed the canvas-wrapped body in the hole. Good dog, Jack muttered. Better than most men. The digging felt good. The ache in his back was a welcome distraction from the ghost that always hovered at the edge of his thoughts. The ghost of his wife, Sarah, taken by consumption 5 years back. The ghost of their son, Michael, lost in a Comanche raid when he was just a boy. And the ghost of his father, Bill, still wearing a badge in a town that felt a world away, even though it was just a few hours' ride. They hadn't spoken in 12 years. Not a single word. The sound of hoofbeats made him straighten up fast. His hand went to his own gun, a habit he'd never lost. Visitors were rare out here. Uninvited ones usually meant trouble. But it was just Ernesto Martinez, his closest neighbor. The old Mexican rancher was 70, but sat a horse like a man half his age. Jack, Martinez said, his face grim. Heard about your father? Jack's shoulders went stiff. What about him? Resigned yesterday. Quit the badge. Jack stopped digging. Bill Hollister was the sheriff of Paradise Springs. He'd been sheriff forever. Bishop's doing? Jack asked. He already knew the answer. Martinez nodded. The hanging pushed him too far. What hanging? Young Daniel's boy took a horse to fetch a doctor for his wife. Bishop decided to make an example of him. Jack slammed the shovel into the ground. His father had seen men hang. It was part of the job, but never for something like this. Never without a real trial. This was different. This was wrong. Town's changing, Jack, Martinez said. Bishop's buying it all up. The railroad's coming through next year. He wants the whole valley. He can have it, Jack said, turning back to the grave, long as he stays away from my land. Martinez was quiet for a long moment, and in that quiet, Jack felt a cold dread creep up his spine. That's the thing, amigo, Martinez said softly. Word is, your ranch is next. The survey crew marked a line. It cuts right through your property. Jack felt that old familiar tension coiling in his gut, the feeling that always came before the fighting started. Bishop has no claim here, he said. This is Hollister land. Papers don't mean much when the man who owns the bank also owns the judge, Martinez said. Your father tried to stand against him, and now he's got no badge. Jack didn't say anything. He just kept shoveling. Sometimes the fight comes to you, Jack, Martinez said as he turned his horse to leave. Whether you want it or not. Jack watched him ride away. He'd come to Montana to be left alone. He was done fighting. The war had taken too much from him, but trouble had a way of finding him. He finished bearing Old Blue as the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. The sound came just after midnight, a horse ridden hard and fast. Jack was on his feet in a second, his rifle in his hands. He peered through the window. In the pale moonlight, he saw a silhouette he hadn't seen in 12 years. His father. When Jack opened the door, he barely recognized him. Bill Hollister looked like he'd aged 20 years since their last, bitter argument. The strong lawman was gone. In his place was a shrunken, stooped old man. Hello, son, Bill said, his voice a ragged whisper. Jack just stood there, the silence between them thick with unspoken words. Aren't you going to invite your old man in? Jack stepped aside. Bill stumbled in and collapsed into a chair by the fire. Heard you quit, Jack said, his voice flat. Resigned, Bill corrected. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. I didn't come here to argue, Bill said, staring into the flames. Then why did you come? Jack demanded. 12 years of nothing, and now you show up in the middle of the night? Because Wesley Bishop is coming for this place, Bill said, his voice trembling. And you need to know what you're up against. I know about the railroad. It's more than that, Bill said, his voice cracking. He's taken everything, Jack. The bank, the town, the law, the new deputies. They don't answer to the badge. They answer to him. Jack stared at the broken man in the chair. This wasn't the father he knew, the righteous man who disowned him for refusing to evict a family of Blackfoot Indians from their land. What happened to standing for what's right? Jack asked, the bitterness of a dozen years creeping into his voice. Isn't that what you always preached? Bill flinched. I was wrong, Jack, about a lot of things. That business with the Blackfoot, you were right. I was just too stubborn to see it. The words hit Jack like a punch to the gut. An apology, 12 years too late. I don't want your forgiveness, Bill continued, his voice barely a whisper. But you need to know. That boy Bishop hanged. Jeff Daniels. It wasn't about a horse. Daniels was carrying a message for me. He knew something. Something Bishop couldn't afford for anyone to know. Jack froze. This changed everything. It wasn't just cruelty. It was a cover-up. I couldn't stop him, Jack. I tried, but I was nothing. 20 years with this star. Bill touched his chest where the badge used to be. And it meant nothing. He looked up, his eyes pleading. I can't fight him anymore. But you were always the stronger one. Before Jack could even process what he'd just heard, a rifle shot cracked through the night. The sound was like a whip crack, sharp and final. Bill jerked in his chair. A look of stunned surprise washed over his face. A dark stain bloomed on the back of his shirt, spreading like a terrible flower. Dad! Jack dove, catching his father as he slumped forward. More shots tore through the cabin, splintering wood, shattering glass. He dragged Bill behind the heavy oak table, flipping it on its side for cover. Jack! Bill gasped, blood bubbling at his lips. It's Marcus Reed, Bishop's new man. Jack risked a look over the table. Shadows were moving in the yard, 4 of them. Maybe more. A voice called out from the darkness, cold and mocking. Wesley Bishop sends his regards, Hollister. It's time to take out the trash. Jack didn't answer with words. He answered with his rifle, a single, carefully aimed shot. One of the shadows crumpled to the ground. The others scattered, their return fire wild and panicked. The quiet rancher was gone. Captain Jack Hollister Union cavalry was back. Two by the well, Bill wheezed, his old lawman's instincts still sharp, even with a bullet in his back. One behind the oak tree. Jack nodded, moving to another window. Another shot, another shadow down. "You're just making this harder on yourself, Hollister," the voice yelled again. It was Reed. Jack had heard of him. A former bounty hunter with a reputation for being fast, mean, and thorough. "Bishop always gets what he wants." Suddenly, a flaming arrow arched through the night sky. It landed on the roof of the barn. The old dry timber caught instantly. Orange light flooded the yard, casting long, dancing shadows. In the flickering glow, Jack saw him. Marcus Reed, a tall man in a black duster, his silver hair shining in the firelight. "Your old man's dying in there," Reed taunted. "Give up now. We'll let you bury him before we burn the rest of this place to the ground." "Jack," Bill's voice was getting weaker, thinner. "Back door. You have to flank them." Jack looked at his father. The pool of blood on the floor was growing, but Bill's eyes were burning with a fire Jack hadn't seen in years. "You'll bleed out if I leave you." "Going to bleed out anyway," Bill coughed, a grim rattle in his chest. "Make it count." Just then, another sound. More hoofbeats. A wild whoop echoed through the night, followed by the deafening boom of a shotgun. Martinez. The old rancher had come back. "Go!" Bill urged, grabbing a pistol from his belt. "I'll keep their heads down." Jack didn't hesitate. He squeezed his father's shoulder one last time and slipped out the back door. He moved through the darkness, a ghost in the night, circling wide. The firefight between Martinez and Reed's men covered the sound of his approach. He saw Reed, half hidden behind a water trough, firing methodically at the cabin. Jack got within 20 yards before a twig snapped under his boot. Reed spun. He was impossibly fast. Both men fired at the same time. Jack felt a hot poker slice across his arm, but his own shot was true. Reed staggered back, clutching his shoulder. "It's over, Reed," Jack yelled. "Your men are down. Martinez is on the ridge. Ride out." Reed just laughed, a low, ugly sound from the shadows. "This is just the beginning, Hollister. This was just a friendly hello." His voice grew fainter as he scrambled for his horse. "Next time, Bishop will be ready to bury you right next to your old man." Jack raised his rifle, but Reed was gone, swallowed by the night. He rushed back into the cabin. Martinez was already there, kneeling beside Bill. One look at his friend's face was all it took. "How bad?" Jack asked, though he already knew. "Bad," Martinez said, his voice thick. "The bullet is deep." Bill's eyes fluttered open. He focused on Jack. "Did you get him?" "Winged him," Jack said. "He ran." Bill managed a small nod. "Coward." He grabbed Jack's shirt, his grip surprisingly strong. "Listen to me, Jack. I have to tell you. 30 years ago, me and Wesley, we found gold." Jack felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool night air. "It was on Blackfoot land," Bill gasped. "There were witnesses, 3 of them. We killed them, Jack. Buried the bodies. Wesley took the gold. He used it to build his empire. And he used my secret to own me." The confession hung in the air, heavy and terrible. His father, a murderer. "That's why I couldn't stop him," Bill whispered. "This whole valley, it's built on a lie. It's built on blood." Before Jack could find his voice, Martinez spoke from the doorway, his face grim. "Someone's coming, a single rider." Jack grabbed his rifle. In the dying light of the burning barn, he saw a figure on horseback approaching slowly, hands held high. It was a woman. "Don't shoot!" Her voice was clear and steady. "My name is Catherine Bishop. I need to speak with Jack Hollister." Jack and Martinez exchanged a look of disbelief. Bishop's daughter? Here? Now? Everyone in the valley knew of Catherine Bishop, the banker's only child. She'd gone to school back east, become a doctor, and then, to everyone's surprise, she'd come back to Paradise Springs. She was the only real doctor for 100 miles. Jack stepped out onto the porch, his rifle held ready. "What do you want?" Catherine dismounted. She was tall, with her father's posture, but none of his coldness. Her face was etched with worry. "Mr. Hollister, she said, her voice urgent. "I've come to warn you. My father has a federal judge in his pocket. He's issued a warrant for your arrest. For murder." Jack's grip on the rifle tightened. "Those men shot my father in the back. It was self-defense." "Not when my father writes the story," Catherine said, her own voice laced with bitterness. "He's deputized Marcus Reed to bring you in, dead or alive." "Reed was just here," Jack said. "He left with a bullet in his shoulder." "He was supposed to kill you quietly," she explained. "The warrant was just his backup plan. It makes everything legal." She glanced toward the cabin. "Is your father—" "He's alive, barely." Her expression softened. "I'm a doctor. Please let me see him." Jack hesitated for a heartbeat, then stepped aside. He followed her into the cabin and watched as she knelt by his father, her hands moving with a practiced skill. She looked up at Jack, her face grave. The silent diagnosis was clear. "The bullet pierced his lung," she said quietly. "There's nothing I can do but make him comfortable." Bill's eyes opened. He looked at Catherine. "Wesley's girl," he rasped. "You look just like your mother." A flicker of pain crossed Catherine's face. She didn't respond, just continued her work. "Why are you helping us?" Jack asked, his voice low and suspicious. "He's your father." She finally looked up, her eyes meeting his. "My father is a monster. I used to think he'd changed, but now I see he was always this way. He's building an empire on the suffering of good people." She glanced down at Bill. "He's been muttering about a ledger in a safe." Bill's hand shot out, grabbing Jack's sleeve. "The ledger," he gasped. "Wesley's safe. It's all there, Jack. The proof, the bribes, the names, everything." He coughed, a terrible wet sound, and his eyes rolled back. Catherine quickly administered a dose of morphine from her bag. "My father keeps detailed record," she said. "He calls it business. I call it blackmail." Jack felt the pieces clicking into place. The hanging, the attack on his ranch. It was all a cover-up. Bishop wasn't just trying to get his land for the railroad. He was trying to bury a secret 30 years old. "You have to leave, Jack," Catherine said, packing her bag. "He won't stop. He can't stop. Not now." "This is my land," Jack said, his voice hard as iron. "I'm not running." Catherine looked at him, a spark of respect in her eyes. "Then you'll need this." She handed him a small bottle of morphine. "For your father. I have to get back before I'm missed, but I can bring more supplies tomorrow." "Why?" Martinez asked from the doorway, his shotgun still held at the ready. "Why risk yourself for us?" Catherine's face hardened. "Wesley Bishop stopped being my father when he hanged a man for trying to save his wife and child." She turned back to Jack. "If that ledger exists, it could stop him for good. But you'll never get to it with a price on your head." Bill groaned. His eyes were open again, clear and lucid. "Jack," he whispered, "promise me. Stop him. For all of them." It was the same gaze that had judged him so harshly 12 years ago. But now it was a plea. "I promise," Jack said. Bill nodded, then his eyes found Catherine. "Tell your father," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "Tell him the dead don't stay buried forever." Catherine went pale but nodded. Jack walked her to her horse. The barn was now just a heap of glowing embers against the dark sky. "Be careful, Jack," she said, swinging into the saddle. "My father plays for keeps." "So do I," Jack said. She looked down at him, a question in her eyes. "You're not afraid?" Jack looked back at the cabin, where his father lay dying, where 12 years of quiet had been shattered in a single night. "I've already lost everything that matters, Catherine," he said. "All I have left is this land. A man with nothing to lose is a man with nothing to fear." She held his gaze for a long moment, then wheeled her horse around and galloped into the darkness. Jack watched her go, wondering if he'd just found an ally or let a viper into his home. Either way, the war had come to Broken Spur Ranch, and Jack Hollister was the last soldier left standing. The sun rose on a scene of devastation. The barn was a blackened skeleton against the morning sky. Inside the cabin, Bill Hollister was a ghost, his breaths shallow and ragged. Jack sat beside him, a cup of cold coffee in his hand. He hadn't slept. "That warrant is trouble," Martinez said, breaking the silence. "Bishop has the law on his side." "Bishop is the law," Jack corrected. "And that's the problem." You could leave, Martinez suggested gently. Sell the ranch, start over. Running's not in my blood, Jack said. Besides, I made a promise. Bill stirred, muttering something Jack couldn't understand. His skin had a waxy gray pallor, the look of a man on his final journey. I have to go to town, Jack said suddenly. Martinez choked on his coffee. With a bounty on your head? That's not brave, amigo. That's suicide. I need to see what I'm up against, Jack insisted. I need to look the devil in the eye. And how do you plan on doing that when every man in town is looking for your face? Jack ran a hand over his thick, gray-streaked beard. I think it's time for a change. An hour later, the man staring back at Jack from the mirror was a stranger. The beard was gone, revealing a hard jaw and a face that had seen its share of trouble. He slicked back his hair, put on a suit he hadn't touched since Sarah's funeral, and perched a pair of wire-rimmed spectacles on his nose. He looked less like a reclusive rancher and more like a businessman from back east. Your own mother wouldn't know you, Martinez said, his voice full of grudging admiration. Let's hope Wesley Bishop doesn't either, Jack replied, slipping a small derringer into his vest. He rode into Paradise Springs just before noon. The town was buzzing. New buildings were going up everywhere, all of them with the same sign, Bishop Mining and Development. The railroad was coming, and Wesley Bishop was making sure he owned everything it touched. Jack saw it immediately. The fear. People hurried along the boardwalks, their eyes downcast. Armed men with deputy badges lounged on street corners, but they didn't look like lawmen. They looked like hired guns. This wasn't a town. It was an occupied territory. He stepped into the Silver Dollar Saloon, the same place he and his father had their last bitter argument. He took a corner table, his back to the wall. The place was crowded, but the conversations were hushed and nervous. What can I get for you? A barmaid asked, her smile tired and empty. Stew, Jack said, and information. He slid a gold coin across the table. Her eyes widened, but she pushed it back. Information gets you hurt in this town, mister. I'm a businessman from Denver, Jack said, keeping his voice level. Looking to invest. I just need to know who runs things. She leaned in close, her voice a whisper. Wesley Bishop runs everything. The air we breathe, the ground we walk on. Cross him, and you disappear. She straightened up. I'll get your stew. As he ate, the saloon doors swung open. A hush fell over the room. It was Marcus Reed. His left arm was in a sling, a fresh bandage showing. His cold eyes swept the room, and for a terrifying second, they locked on Jack. Jack's heart hammered in his chest, but Reed's gaze moved on. Listen up, Reed's voice boomed. Wesley Bishop is offering $1,000 for the capture of Jack Hollister, wanted for murder. He slapped a wanted poster on the bar. The drawing was crude, a wild-eyed man with a thick beard. It looked nothing like the clean-shaven man in the suit sitting in the corner. But as Jack was finishing his meal, the doors opened again. And this time, the man who walked in made Jack's blood run cold. It was his brother, Thomas. Jack hadn't seen his younger brother Tommy in 15 years, not since he'd left for California to make his fortune. But there was no mistaking him. He had the Hollister jaw, the same way of standing. But he was different. His suit was expensive. His posture was confident. He looked like he owned the place. Reed approached him immediately. Mr. Hollister, he said, his tone full of respect. Mr. Bishop would like you to join him for dinner tonight. Tell Wesley I'll be there, Tommy said, his voice cool and detached. He moved to the bar and ordered a whiskey. Then he turned, his eyes scanning the room. His gaze passed right over Jack without a flicker of recognition. Jack knew he had to take the chance. He stood up and walked over to his brother's table. Excuse me, he said, altering his voice just slightly. Mind if I join you? The name's Garrison. James Garrison, from Denver. Tommy gestured to the empty chair. Thomas Hollister, Paradise Springs Bank. Hollister, Jack said, feigning surprise. I just saw a wanted poster for a man with that name. A muscle twitched in Tommy's jaw. My brother, he said, the black sheep of the family. Family can be complicated, Jack offered. Indeed, Tommy said, taking a sip of his whiskey. So, Mr. Garrison, what's your interest in Paradise Springs? The railroad, Jack lied smoothly. My investors see potential for growth. If you're looking to invest here, Tommy said, his eyes hard, there's only one man you need to see. Wesley Bishop. Nothing happens in this valley without his approval. Including a warrant for your own brother? Jack asked. Tommy's eyes narrowed. You ask a lot of questions, Mr. Garrison. Just then, a commotion erupted outside. A woman was screaming. Jack looked through the window. It was Jeff Daniels' widow, Mary, and her young son. Two of Reed's deputies were trying to drag the boy away. Marcus Reed strode over and backhanded the boy, sending him sprawling in the dust. Bishop wants that land cleared by sundown, Reed snarled. Tommy stood up abruptly. Excuse me, Mr. Garrison. He walked outside and confronted Reed. Jack couldn't hear what they were saying, but after a moment, Reed backed down. Tommy had said something that stopped him cold. When Tommy came back inside, Jack was watching him. That was decent of you, Jack said. Tommy just shrugged. Bishop wants their land. He doesn't want a public spectacle. Progress sometimes requires sacrifice. Is that what you call it? Jack asked, unable to keep the disgust out of his voice. Progress? Tommy gave him a long, hard look. Mr. Garrison, he said slowly, you seem to have a strong opinion on local affairs for a man just passing through. Jack knew he'd pushed too far. He stood up, placing a coin on the table. Thank you for your time, Mr. Hollister. As he turned to leave, Tommy's voice stopped him. Garrison, a piece of advice. Whatever your real business is here, finish it and get out. This town isn't kind to meddlers. Jack walked out into the street, his mind reeling. His own brother working for the man who was tearing their family apart. He was heading for the doctor's office when he almost collided with Catherine Bishop. She looked at him, her eyes wide with panic. Jack, what are you doing here? She whispered, pulling him into an alley. My father has men everywhere. I needed to see it for myself, he said. How bad is he? Worse, she said grimly. He doesn't have much time. She pushed a small bag into his hands. More morphine, bandages. You have to go. Now. I saw my brother, Jack said. Thomas. Catherine's face was unreadable. He manages the bank for my father. He's complicated. Complicated how? He carries out my father's orders, she said, choosing her words carefully. But sometimes he softens the blow. The townspeople trust him in a way they never trusted my father. Before he could ask more, she lowered her voice. My father is having dinner with the railroad investors tonight. He's going to announce the final route for the tracks, right through your ranch. Just as she spoke, a new shout came from the street. It was Jeff Daniels' son again. He was facing Marcus Reed, this time with a hunting knife in his hand. You killed my pa! The boy screamed, his voice breaking. Put the knife down, boy, Reed said, his hand hovering over his gun, or you'll end up swinging from the same rope. Jack saw the moment unfolding. The grieving boy, the cold-blooded killer. It was only going to end one way. He stepped out of the alley. That's enough, Reed, he said, his real voice deep and clear. Let the boy go. Reed spun around. Recognition dawned in his eyes, followed by a cruel smile. Hollister, he said, I knew you'd be stupid enough to come back. He drew his pistol. You're under arrest. Deputies poured out of the saloon, guns drawn. Jack was surrounded, trapped. He was calculating the odds, a derringer against 4 guns, when another shot cracked the air. But it wasn't from Reed's men. From the steps of the bank, Tommy Hollister stood with a smoking revolver pointed at the sky. That's enough, Marcus, Tommy called out, his voice ringing with authority. He's my brother. This is family business. I'll handle it. Reed hesitated, his eyes burning with hatred. He wanted Jack, but he was afraid of crossing Tommy. You've got 1 hour to get him out of this town, Reed snarled. After that, he's mine. Tommy nodded. Fair enough. He walked over to Jack, the space between them charged with 15 years of anger and silence. Hello, Jack, he said quietly. You look old. You look rich, Jack shot back. Working for the devil seems to agree with you. Let's go inside, Tommy said, his jaw tight. He led Jack into the bank, into a private office. Catherine followed them in. What in God's name were you thinking? Tommy demanded, closing the door. I needed answers, Jack said. Our father is dying. Reed shot him. The cool confidence vanished from Tommy's face. Bill, is he? Hanging on, Catherine answered. Before Tommy could respond, the door to the office burst open. Wesley Bishop stood there, his large frame filling the doorway. A cold smile spread across his face. Well, well, Bishop said, his voice a low purr. The whole dysfunctional family, all in one place. My daughter, my banker, and the prodigal son. His eyes locked on Jack. I've been waiting for this, Captain Hollister. My father told me everything, Bishop, Jack said, his voice dangerously quiet. About the gold, about the murders. Bishop just shrugged. Your father was always a sentimental fool. Progress requires sacrifice. Is that what you call murdering my wife? Jack snarled. Bishop's smile widened, cruel and sharp. Sarah was smarter than I gave her credit for. She figured it out, just like your mother, Catherine. A regrettable, but necessary, business expense. Catherine gasped, her face as white as a sheet. This valley is mine, Hollister, Bishop continued. Your ranch is the last piece. Sell it to me. I'll even let you live. Refuse and I'll burn it to the ground with you and your dying father inside it. You have one day to decide. He turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind him. The silence in the room was deafening. He killed her, Jack whispered, the truth finally landing with the force of a physical blow. 5 years he'd thought it was consumption. It had been murder. Tommy finally spoke, his voice hoarse. I'll create a distraction, get you out of town. Why? Jack demanded. Why are you helping me? You work for him. He's my father too, Jack, Tommy said, his eyes unreadable. You may have walked away from this family, but I never did. He led Jack through a series of back rooms to a rear exit. He pressed a folded piece of paper into Jack's hand. A map to a hunting cabin. If things go bad, go there. Come with me, Tommy. We can fight him together. Tommy shook his head. I'm more useful here. For now. The look in his eyes told Jack everything. Tommy wasn't just working for Bishop. He was playing his own game. A long, dangerous game. Be careful, brother, Tommy said, a ghost of a smile on his face. As Jack slipped out into the alley, he felt a flicker of hope. He wasn't alone in this fight after all. The ride back to Broken Spur was a blur of grief and rage. Jack arrived to find his ranch had become a refuge. Catherine was there, along with Mary Daniels and her son, Jeff Jr., his shoulder bandaged. Reed had tried to run them off their land, and Catherine had brought them here. Jack went straight to his father's side. Bill was fading fast. You went to town, he whispered. I did, Jack said. I saw Tommy. He's a good boy, Bill rasped. Smarter than both of us. His breathing grew ragged. Don't let him win, Jack. Not after Sarah. I won't, Jack promised. Catherine joined him in the kitchen. The railroad investors arrive tomorrow, she said. My father promised them your land would be clear. He's coming tonight. How many men does he have? 15, maybe 20. Jack looked around the room. An old man, a wounded boy, 2 women, and himself, against 20 hired guns. We should prepare, he said. They spent the next hours turning the ranch house into a fortress, barricading windows, setting up firing positions. As midnight approached, Jack sat by his father's bed. Catherine was with him. My father wasn't always like this, she said softly. After my mother died, something broke inside him. I found her old medical records. It wasn't a fever that killed her, Jack. The symptoms, they match arsenic poisoning. Before Jack could react, Bill's eyes shot open. His voice was suddenly strong, urgent. He killed Sarah, Jack, your wife. It wasn't consumption. It was poison, the same way he killed Catherine's mother. She found papers about the gold, and he silenced her. The room spun. Sarah, his Sarah, murdered. The grief he'd carried for 5 years transformed into a white-hot rage. I knew, Bill choked out, tears streaming down his weathered face. I suspected, and I did nothing. I was a coward. No, Jack said, his voice thick. You were trapped. Promise me, Jack, Bill whispered, his grip on Jack's hand weakening. For Sarah. Stop him. I promise, Jack vowed. And with one last shuddering breath, Bill Hollister was gone. Jack sat there, his father's hand still in his, the grief and the rage churning inside him. Catherine gently touched his shoulder. "There's more," she said, her voice trembling. "I overheard my father and Reed. They're not just coming to take the ranch. They're coming to kill everyone. No witnesses," he said. "No loose ends." Jack stood up. The grief was still there, but now it had a razor's edge. Bishop wasn't just a greedy man. He was a cornered animal, and cornered animals were the most dangerous. "Then we make sure the world is watching," Jack said. Just then, Martinez appeared in the doorway. "They're here," he said simply. "They're coming." The sun was just beginning to touch the tops of the mountains. Riders were emerging from the tree line, spreading out, surrounding the house. At their head was Marcus Reed. They sent a man forward with a white flag. "Surrender now, Hollister. Reed will give you safe passage." Jack laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. He knew it was a lie, but he needed to buy time. "Tell him I need an hour to consider," he yelled back. He gathered everyone in the kitchen. "There's an old root cellar under the barn," he said. "The entrance is hidden. If they breach the house, we use it to escape." But as the hour wound down, a single rider broke from Reed's line and rode toward the house. It was Tommy. "Bishop sent me to negotiate," he said, stepping inside. He took in the scene, the fortified house, Catherine tending to Jeff Jr. Swooned. His eyes landed on the closed bedroom door. "He's gone," Jack said. Tommy's face hardened. He walked into the bedroom and stood over their father's body for a long moment. When he came out, he looked at Jack, and for the first time in 15 years, Jack saw the brother he remembered. "Bishop breaks everyone eventually," Tommy said. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather book. "This is why I really came." He handed it to Jack. It was a ledger. "Bishop's private accounts," Tommy explained. "I've been his banker for 10 years, and for 10 years I've been copying his records. Every bribe, every threat, every murder. It's all in there." Jack stared at the book, stunned. Sarah's name was there. A payment. For special medicine. "I've been waiting for the right moment," Tommy said, his voice full of a decade of suppressed rage. "He has to pay, Jack. For Dad. For Sarah. For everything." "They'll kill you when they find out," Jack said. "Maybe," Tommy said, "but this book will destroy him." He put his hat back on. "I'm going back out there. I'll tell Reed you're refusing. It will buy you more time. Use the root cellar. Get that ledger to the judge in Helena." He extended his hand. "When this is over, if we're both still here, we should talk." "I'd like that," Jack said, gripping his brother's hand. Jack watched from the window as Tommy rode back to Reed's line. He saw them arguing. He saw Reed getting angrier and angrier. Then he saw Reed raise his pistol. A shot rang out. Tommy fell from his horse. "No!" Jack screamed, lunging for the door. Martinez grabbed him. "It's a trap, Jack. They want you to run out there." He was right, but Jack couldn't leave his brother to die in the dirt. "We need a diversion," he said, his mind racing. He looked at the half-burned barn. "The fire. We'll give them another fire." He slipped out the back, setting the remaining hay ablaze. As thick smoke filled the air, distracting Reed's men, Jack sprinted across the yard to his brother. "Told you it was a trap," Tommy gasped, blood bubbling on his lips. "I know," Jack said, dragging him behind a water trough. A bullet splintered the wood next to his head. They were pinned down. "Give it up, Hollister," Reed yelled. "You're all going to die today." The situation was hopeless. They were out of time, out of options. And then a new sound. The thunder of hoofbeats coming fast from the south. A dozen riders cresting the ridge. And leading them impossibly was Wesley Bishop himself. But he wasn't alone. Riding beside him were 8 men in expensive city suits. The railroad investors. They had arrived to a war zone. "Reed!" Bishop's voice boomed across the yard, a mask of fury on his face. "Stand down. What is the meaning of this?" It was a performance, a brilliant, cold-blooded performance. Bishop was playing the shocked businessman, horrified by his overzealous marshal. He was salvaging his deal in front of the moneymen. "Gentlemen, I apologize," Bishop said to the investors, his voice dripping with false regret. "A simple eviction notice that seems to have gotten out of hand." He turned his eyes to Jack. "Let's talk, Hollister." like civilized men. Civilization left when your men shot my brother, Jack yelled back. Catherine ran from the house to tend to Tommy. Bishop was masterful, playing his part, offering help, showing concern. He had Jack trapped, refused his help, and Jack looked like the unreasonable one. Accepted, and he legitimized Bishop's presence. They carried Tommy inside. Catherine worked frantically to save him. Outside, Bishop was giving the investors a tour, pointing out the route for his precious railroad, stepping right over the bodies of the men he'd sent to die. Jack knew he had only one chance. He had to expose Bishop, right here, right now, in front of everyone. He stepped out onto the porch. Bishop met him there. "I'm prepared to offer you $40,000 for this land," Bishop said, his voice low and menacing. "Take it and walk away. Refuse, and no one in that house sees another sunrise." "This isn't about the railroad, is it?" Jack said, the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. "It's about the gold. The gold you and my father found. It's here, isn't it? Under this ranch." Bishop's civilized mask finally slipped. A flicker of pure hatred showed in his eyes. "I know everything," Jack pressed on, his voice ringing out for the investors to hear. "I know you poisoned my wife. I know you poisoned your own wife. And I have the proof." He held up the ledger. "Your brother gave it to me. Every crime you've ever committed." For the first time, Jack saw fear in Wesley Bishop's eyes. "He's lying!" Bishop screamed at the investors, his composure shattering. "There is no ledger. There is no gold." He turned to Reed. "Kill him! Kill them all!" Chaos erupted. The investors scattered. Reed's men opened fire. Jack dove for cover, returning fire, providing cover for Mary to escape toward the creek. He saw Bishop making a run for the horses, trying to escape. Fueled by years of grief and rage, Jack tackled him. They rolled in the dust, two old men fighting like animals. Bishop was strong, desperate. He clawed at Jack's face, landed a lucky blow with a rock that opened a cut on Jack's temple. Blood streamed into Jack's eyes. Bishop scrambled away, pulling a derringer from his coat. "It's over, Hollister," Bishop panted, aiming the small pistol. "Give Sarah my regards." A gunshot echoed across the valley, but it wasn't Bishop who had fired. The banker staggered. A red stain spread across his chest. Behind him, swaying on his feet, blood soaking through his own bandages, was Tommy. He held Jack's smoking revolver in his hand. "That," Tommy whispered, "is for my family." He collapsed to his knees. Bishop turned, a look of pure disbelief on his face. He took one step toward his killer, then fell face down in the dirt. Dead. Jack rushed to his brother's side. "Did I do it right, Jack?" Tommy gasped, his life fading fast. "Did I make it right?" "You did, Tommy," Jack said, tears streaming down his face. "You saved us all." A faint smile touched Tommy's lips. "Good," he whispered. "Tell Catherine. Safe deposit box. Helena. The rest of the proof." His eyes went distant. "Take care of Paradise Springs, Jack. Town needs a good man." And then he was gone. Jack knelt there, holding his brother's body, as Reed and the last of his men regrouped. He and Mary retreated to the creek, firing back, buying just enough time to disappear into the rocky hills. For 2 days they traveled, exhausted and grieving, making their way to Helena. They found Judge Warner, an old friend of their father's, and laid the story bare. The ledger, the testimony, the promise of more proof in Tommy's safe deposit box. The judge was horrified. He issued warrants, promised a full investigation. But then a telegram arrived. Marcus Reed had declared himself the new law in Paradise Springs. He had seized control. "It will take days, weeks, to assemble enough marshals to take him down," the judge said grimly. "The town doesn't have weeks," Jack said. The people of Paradise Springs had lived in fear for too long. They couldn't trade one tyrant for another. He knew what he had to do. He had spent 12 years trying to escape his past, trying to leave the lawman and the soldier behind. But some things you can't outrun. "Judge," Jack said, his voice steady, "give me a badge. Let me go back. Let me finish this." Judge Warner looked at him, a long, measuring gaze. "You sound just like your father," he said. He opened a drawer and pulled out a tin star. "A temporary commission. It's all I can do. You'll be outnumbered." "I won't be alone," Jack said. He pinned the badge to his vest. It felt heavier than he could have imagined. But for the first time in a very long time, it felt right. He was no longer running from his past. He was riding to reclaim a future. For himself, for his family, and for the soul of a town called Paradise Springs. The final showdown was coming. If you enjoyed this story and want to see how Jack Hollister brings justice back to Paradise Springs, don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next.